Good afternoon, Ken.
Good afternoon.
This is our second conversation. And this one, I really just want to focus on one topic.
Okay.
And that is politics, which can be divisive, can be controversial, but I think it is an important topic. And it's one I look forward to having with you.
Okay.
And so this is one I did a lot of research on because there's a lot of education I want to go into. There's more education to have. But just thinking about politics and where we are today and how we got here, it's interesting because it does affect our lives.
Yes, it does.
Right? You can choose to ignore it, but at the end of the day, policies do impact. Whether it's on a federal level, state level, county level, city level.
Every level.
Every level affects you, right? Like one time we called 911 and they're like, oh, you're unincorporated, so you have to reach out to the county, not the city. So
yeah,
it affects you whether you know it or not.
You know it or not, exactly.
So before we get into your journey into politics, I wanted to just talk about politics in general. And one thing I found that was really interesting was, so our first president, you remember who that was?
Washington?
Washington.
Sure.
So he talked about, see if I can find it. All right. So he talked about the potential dangers of a two-party system. See, he already in 1796 saw the danger to this.
Mm-hmm.
And he went on to say that the political parties could lead to factions that might dominate the government actions, fostering division and partisanship. Washington feared that powerful parties could erode the power of the people and lead to despotism. He believed that national unity was vital for the country's success. So he thought risk of excessive party spirit, potential negative impacts on the government's effectiveness and democratic process. I mean, do you feel like that's happening today?
Yes, in a way, I do. I think that there's, I think that the parties right now are so far apart. It's like you can only have an opinion of the party that's in power. If your opinion reflects what they're thinking, then you're fine. Mm-hmm. If your opinion doesn't, then you are something of an outcast, or you are dangerous. You're dangerous to them. Mm. And I think you see that quite a lot, you know.
And maybe we'll talk about this more later, but so you've been around for, as an adult, mm-hmm. 15 elections. And if you count your whole life, add almost 4 more to that.
Yeah. So
almost 20 elections you've been a part of. Over the past 2 or 3, has it been as divisive as it is today? Is that just a term we're using today because guys like me haven't been around long enough? Or when you were my age, did you feel like the elections were this divisive? Or
no.
It was just like, hey, you had a friend that voted like that, but did you dislike them or hate them because of that?
No. But you have to understand something. Where I grew up, they call it the Rust Belt. It's Pennsylvania. Mm-hmm. Okay? And there was very few Republican people at that time. They were all Democrats because they were all hardworking steel mill people, you know, construction people. I mean, my father worked in the steel mill for 40 some years, you know, and every one of those guys were the feeling that they had was the Democrat Party was the party of the working man. Okay. And they proved it by supporting, you know, ideas that the working people had. And I think that's changed now. I you know, it has changed for me, mm-hmm. as far as what the party stands for and what it stands for now.
You would say 60s, 70s, and before.
Yeah, there was disagreement, but there was disagreement on you know, you could disagree with somebody and still not hate them. Okay, you could discuss it with them, and you could come to an agreement, and they did. And there was what they used to call them was how would they say it? It was a social. They were liberally social and conservatively patriotic, and that worked for years. When we got into trouble, we coalesced. Korean War, the Vietnam War. I was born during the Second World War, but I can remember when Eisenhower was elected. I can remember when Truman was running too. My father used to watch the we had the radio then. We didn't have television, and we listened to all that kind of stuff. And he explained things to me. Also explained to me to be careful, because he was a person that could see that there was some differences. He says, and you had to be careful that you didn't go running hog wild in one direction. And that's what I think we're doing today. I think we're going hog wild in one direction. I can't talk to you about, this particular item, because if you don't believe me, you won't listen to me, and you'll call me some other kind of a dumb name. It's okay. Go ahead. But that's not changing my way of thinking.
So you say back then, what would be an archetype of, and you kind of alluded to it, but an archetype for a Democrat versus a Republican?
Well, I think everybody that was working for a living were struggling to get. We were all the same economic status. Okay, you only had one car. When I was growing up, you didn't have, everybody in the house didn't have a car. We only had one. It was my father's. And all of my buddies that I grew up with, they had one car. It was their dad's. Okay? When you became 16 years old and you wanted to go out on a date, you had to have a very good reason why you wanted that car, and you got it for so many hours, and you were back by then. And if you did, you didn't get it again.
Yeah.
That don't happen. That doesn't happen now. It's not. It's like we all grew up with the same. I didn't have a. I remember my first record player that I bought. It was a record player. All of us sat around and listened to that. Because that was strange. That was different. Nobody had a record player. I got the first one, right?
Yes. Yeah. Yesterday, when I was thinking about our conversation that we're going to have today, I was thinking about all the technological changes that you've experienced in your lifetime.
Yeah. I can remember having to pick up the phone and ask the operator for a number.
Yeah.
I can still remember my first dial number. My first phone number at my house was Oliver 23108. OL 23108. Man, that was a big deal. You could get on a phone and you could go and get it, and somebody would answer. We had the operator. I can remember in my grandmother's house, we had to crank the phone in order to get it was off the wall. It looks like the old time looking.
So let's talk about that as far as how technology influenced I guess politics back then, because back then you were only influenced by radio.
Just radio.
And there's only so much you can do via radio. Do you think, have you heard of the term gaslighting?
Yes.
Was that a tactic back then?
No.
So
you didn't have anything like that. You had, and
I guess to further the question, how would one party or the other try to convince other people to vote for them? Versus today, it's ads. You have so many different more streams of convincing.
You had the newspapers and you had the radio, and that was all you had. And I can remember the first television set that we got, and everybody had the same. It was a big box. It was about the size of a, I don't know what kind of a box you would look at it. It was a little smaller than a Coleman cooler.
Yeah.
About the size of a Yeti maybe, and in the middle of it was a 6-inch screen.
Yeah, tiny.
It was a tiny thing. It was just a big box with a little screen on it,
Was that, when you got the TV, what was that experience like?
Well, that was great. But you had you didn't have anything on. You had, I can remember watching, what was the name? The robot, Itobar or Robot One or something. Howdy Doody, Mickey Mouse Club.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the kind of stuff that Ed Sullivan was the big thing to watch.
Yeah.
Ed Sullivan was and then they started getting the news. The news would come on, and everybody watched Edward R. Murrow. I mean, he was the only one.
And you would trust the news.
You trusted him.
Do you
Yes.
think like back then they were trying to give you false information, or do you think it was factual?
I don't think they were. I mean, and, you don't know that. I mean, but
You looking back,
it didn't seem false.
yeah.
I mean, what they said happened, and they actually followed the news, and there was no partisan stuff. I mean, I can remember Watergate. When Watergate came on and they went after Nixon, they went after him with a vengeance. Everybody did. And they got him. And he was wrong, and they proved him wrong. And it was newspaper people, it was journalists that did that. It wasn't politicians.
Yeah.
Or it wasn't cops.
I mean, now, right? How much trust do you have? I know Trump likes to use the word false media or whatever that term he uses, false news. But how much trust do you have in the media today versus back then?
Well, I do have trust in the conservative media to a point. Okay.
I never want to blindly.
Yeah, I don't want to blindly. But when I listen to the conservative media, right, and Fox News, if you want to hear, that's what I watch. Okay, and I'm not ashamed to say that. I watch them and I listen to them, and I see what's going on. Okay, I look at the other channels and I find the other channels. You can't say that they're not, distorting the news. They're taking exactly what somebody says. I might say something like, well, I don't know, like everybody that wears a purple shirt is crazy.
Yeah.
Especially if in a wintertime. And they'll only put that on there. They'll only say what they want. They'll take what you said and take half of what you meant.
So that wasn't a tactic
they didn't do that back then. No. Edward R. Murrow and there was another one too. There was two guys. Can't think of their name right now, but
like in the medical field, right? I generally want to trust the doctor.
Yeah.
It's like, if I don't trust you, I mean, we were talking about my friend going through cancer. I don't want to have to think, is this guy trustworthy? And so 40 years ago, you had a high level of trust for people telling you information.
I had a high level of trust until this last pandemic. Now I don't trust them either. I mean, I did. I had a high level of trust. And I'm unique in the fact is that I'm old enough that I have my same doctor. I've had the same doctor probably for 30 years.
He's still alive.
Yeah, he's a young man. He was a young man. The first doctor that he worked with passed away, and I stayed with him. Dr. David Lindstrom's a great guy. Okay? And I trust him. He's somebody that I can call and I can ask a question to. If I have what I think is going on. I did it. Okay? I was in Cincinnati and I woke up one morning and there was blood all over the urinal, man. I was peeing red, looked like tomato soup. And I called him on the phone, got him, I talked to him, and I asked him, I says, what's this? All of a sudden this just happened. He says, well, you might have a kidney stone. I said, well, I don't have any pain. And everybody says a kidney stone gives you pain. I don't have that. He says, go to the clinic. He says, start drinking only water and go to the clinic and check it out, get a urine sample and everything. And they said, okay. And then when you get back, you come and see me. So I went to the clinic in Cincinnati and they said, yes, you have microscopic blood in your urine. You should go back. Well, I came home and I was a couple of weeks before I got back home. I came back home and I was thinking, everything looks good. I don't think I'm going to go. My wife forced me to go. And I went to Doc Livingston, and he says, he made me give him a urine sample, and he said the same thing. You still have blood in your urine. He says, I got a good friend. He says, Dr. Spark Corwin. He says, I want you to go see him. Another good guy, great guy. Went there and you know, he met with him and he went through the process too, and it was getting close to hunting season. Okay, so I've got my truck completely packed full of hunting gear and everything, and this is, I'll never forget, it was a Wednesday.
This happened?
It was 2012, I think.
Okay.
You know, so
60s.
yeah, it's 6, 8 years, 10 years ago, something like that. It's not been very long because when I went, you know, I thought, well, I'm going to go in there, and my wife and I went to meet him, and I'm thinking, well, you know, let's get this over with, and we're going to go. She was going to go home, and I was going to take off, go hunting. I was going to leave, and he sat me down. He says, I got some bad news for you, Ken. He says, you got bladder cancer. And I looked at him. I says, can I go elk hunting? That was my first statement. Can I go elk hunting? Oh yeah, you can go. He says, when you come back, we'll take care of you. And he did, you know. And I've got, since then, Dr. Corwin left, and he's in Texas now, which is probably a smart move. And
What was that treatment process for you like?
the treatment they gave me was they injected live TB bacteria into my bladder. And the thing of it is, the cancer hadn't got into the wall of the bladder, but it was in the membrane around the wall. And so it was, you know, it would have gotten into the wall. Once it did that, I was really in trouble. Then I would have had to have the colostomy and worry about whether or not it's going to go some other place, because when it gets into the wall of your bladder, that
What
metastasizes and
stage
moves.
did they put you at when they?
They didn't put me at any stage.
Interesting.
You know, they just said, we can get rid of this, and this is how we're going to do it. I had to go to him once a week for 6 weeks and have injected that stuff into me, and I had to hold it for an hour. Then I had to, you know, drink water and get rid of it.
Yeah.
The first 6 weeks, it didn't work. I still had it. So I had to go through 2 of those processes. And it finally did. It finally worked. And by then, you know, they diagnosed me with diabetes 2. And so, and I was dinking around with that. Still am. And, you know, and I had a couple of, you know, pretty good dietitians that I went to see, but they all went back to Dr. Lindstrom. You know, they were his dietitians that he sent me to, you know, for the diabetes, and he sent me to Dr. Corwin for the bladder cancer. And I had a heart attack, and I had a cardiologist in the same outfit, the same
Just
place.
a tank.
Well, you know, I mean, I had that was a different experience too. That happened in 2009, I think. And all this, that started the whole,
Yeah,
the
you
whole,
just refused. I mean, your initial was your eye. That was
yeah,
a long
that
time
was,
ago.
that was when I was 27 years
And
old.
then cancer, then
And
heart
cancer, and then heart attack,
stroke.
cancer. I didn't have a stroke yet. Worry about that.
You're a tank.
Concerned about that. But it, you know, the heart attack was different too. I had a good friend of mine that I worked with, Mike Shumway, and he one day he was sitting. We'd go to coffee, and then we'd leave and go out and do our work for the health district. We'd always take our first break was, you know, 3 or 4 of us would get together and have a cup of coffee at one of the restaurants, you know, and then we'd take off. And he was sitting at this restaurant. He says, I just pain across the top of my leg. And he says, it just hurts. Like it's like I can't, you know, it's like a muscle ache and I can't get rid of it, you know. And I said, you got to go to the doctor. He goes, no, I ain't going to go to the doctor. You know, it's just, you know, he was in good shape. He was a referee. He was running all over the place. You know, he was a little short thing, you know, and he wasn't fat and he wasn't out of shape at all. By the time the end of the day came, he couldn't hardly breathe. And so when he went back to the office, they forced him to go hospital, and he had a heart attack, and they put a stent in him, you know, and he was okay. And I retired in 2003. So it was before that happened. And I never forgot what he said, the way he felt. But I always thought if you were going to get a heart attack, you know, it's like, bang, you're going to be on the floor and it's going to be hurting, and, you know, you'd know it right away, you know. So this one night, it was late at night. It was around midnight, and I took a shower, and I got this pain. It was going across my chest, And I told my wife, I says, it's funny pain. I said, it's like if I could just stretch, it would get out. And I was going to the gym and working out and everything back then too. And she said, well, she says, maybe, he says, take this gas thing, some gas pills. I took it, I said, it didn't work. And she says, if that don't work in an hour, she says, we're calling 911. I said, and I told her, I said, we're calling 911. I'm not going to hospital because I think I got a gas pain, because it didn't hurt that bad. It was just uncomfortable, but it didn't get any better. And and I'm thinking, this thing is still aggravating me. So I said, well, go ahead, call 911. So she called 911. Well, a friend of mine was a fireman, and he told me, he says, whenever the fire department comes, he says, they can't ask you your medical history, So just put all your medications that you have out that you're taking, you put it out. And by then I didn't have hardly any, I was taking a leave and, that's about it, and Excedrin and that. And I put what I had out there, and they looked at it, and these two young firemen came in. We got a fireman that lives down the street here at the end of the road. His name is Brent Chomos. I've known him since.
He still lives here?
Yeah. He's a retired captain but I knew him when he was like 18 or 19 playing hockey so I've known Brent and I knew his mom and dad and his brother, I knew the whole family. And Brent, he'll come up every once in a while with us and have a beer, but he came up one time, and he says, I was burning some brush out in the backyard. And he says, Kenny, he says, put a table out there with some hot dogs on it and tell them they're coming after you. Tell them you're having a wiener roast. I said, okay, Brent, I will. They did. They came up. What are you doing? Having a wiener roast. Anyway, I was sitting in the room in there, and I said, you guys know Brent Chomos? And the kid says, oh yeah, we know Captain Chomos. He's a good guy. I said, yeah, he is. He's a real good guy. So they're putting all these machines on me, to check me out. And finally they looked at me and they said, oh, Mr. DeLeon, he says, you're having a heart attack. I said, what hospital do you want to go to? And I looked at him and I said, damn, boys, I says, you know how to make a dent in the guy's day. So they had a hard time in my house, all the rhododendrons and trees and everything. And they were trying to figure out how to get the gurney. And I said, guys, I'll just walk out on the yard. And I said, I'll walk out in the yard and get on it. And okay. So I walked out and got in the yard, and up I went to Providence Hospital. First day I met Dr. Duong. Good guy. Goes to the gym I go to now. Mortal Fitness. And he always likes to see me in there.
Does he still work? Is he retired? Does he still work?
He still works. Yeah, and I still visit. I still go see him. My son goes see him too. Because I told Chris, I said, he's a good doctor. He's no BS. When he tells you, and he doesn't pull punches. He's not your, oh my God, you're going to be okay guy either. Yeah, he looked at me and he told my wife he needs to lose 100 pounds. And Jen says, he'll look skinny. And he looked her wrong better. He said, he'll look normal.
So that ever happened?
I haven't lost 100 pounds, but I've lost 40. But those doctors that I have now, I trust.
Yeah.
Do I trust government people telling me about a pandemic? They can tell me anything they want to tell me again about a pandemic, and I'll let you know just where to tell them to put it where the sun don't shine, because I ain't listening to any of that crap.
And that's like, as a father, here's what's interesting. I want to instruct my children.
Yeah.
And I was thinking about this topic more, and I'm going to do a podcast with a life coach.
Yeah.
So I've been thinking about that subject more, and it's like, as a father, especially with children living with you, you are a life coach to your kids.
You are.
Right, the first 18, or now it's 30, depending on how long the child lives there. But
yeah,
the first 18, it's like you're preparing them for life. I would say some parents do poorly.
Yeah.
Some parents fail.
They do.
Some parents get a passing grade. Some parents get their kid to 18 barely surviving.
Yeah.
Other kids get there thriving. And but one of the principles I teach my kids is to question everything.
Sure.
But then that backfires because they start questioning me.
Well,
which I'm okay with.
Yeah.
If you have logic and reason.
Mm-hmm.
And as they get older, right? My oldest is 11, and because we have a 6-year-old, it's easier to parent 11 like he's a 6-year-old.
Sure.
It's like, no, he's almost 12. We need to start letting him make mistakes. I mean, we already have, but
Yeah.
we need to let him start thinking through things, letting him start do that stuff, because if we continue to coddle him, he will be 18 someday, and if we haven't prepared him to think through things, to question things, even if that means sometimes questioning us, then we failed. He's ill-prepared for the real world.
Yeah.
Because if he goes from, we tell him everything, and then at 18, okay, go figure life out, then in my mind, I failed.
Well, I don't think you failed. I think
Failure in as far as I didn't prepare them for the real world. There's different ways to grade it, right? If your kid is extremely overweight and has all these health issues and blah, blah, blah at 18, then it's like, you didn't do a very good job.
Yeah.
They survived, but they made it. But so, I'm being more facetious than when saying failure, but that's not a topic I want to get today.
Okay.
But getting back to you grew up as a lifelong Democrat.
Yes.
Your dad was a Democrat.
Till he died.
And that, back then, to you, was the working man or woman. What do you think, what was the stance of the Republicans back then? What was their stance?
They were viewed, as I grew up, they were viewed as the successful people who were wealthy. They were the wealthy people in our town. The wealthy people, the owners of the Johnson Bronze, where my dad worked, was a Republican. Okay, the owner of the Mesta Machine was a Republican. Okay, and and I don't know why it went that way, but it was always it still is the rich man's party. They keep thinking it's the rich man's. Changing now.
Right, because you have the Hollywood elites.
Right.
You have these
Soros's, you got all the, you got the billionaires, the Wall Street guys, that are pumping money into this thing. And they're pumping money into that because think about what they want to do right now. Now the Democrat Party is a party that wants to hold the worker down. Because
when do you think that changed?
I think it's just been kind of a gradual shift. I think things were pretty good. I think the Clinton presidency started all that. I mean, you started taking businesses and we got this hoodwinked us and saying, well, we're going to take our big manufacturing companies and we're going to move them into these third world nations so that we can bring them up. But what they were doing was they were moving their facilities there because it was becoming expensive for them to pay the workers. So what they did is they moved into Mexico, they moved into Brazil, they moved into these other countries, and they got people to work to do the same job that the Americans were doing for half the price. Didn't change the cost of the automobile or the cost of the product. It just was easier and cheaper to make, and that happened, and that was NAFTA. That was when you and nobody realized that. I didn't realize that. I mean, I didn't even think that way. I thought that was the greatest idea in the world.
Didn't Trump? Wasn't he the one that was kind of questioning that?
Trump did. Trump was the first one that
he was like, "Wait a minute, why do we have this agreement?"
Yeah. And it was and if you listen to him, it was a stupid agreement. It has taken and it happened. I watched my father, the plant that my father worked at, the town that I lived in, Newcastle, was a steel mill town. It went away. Okay? And it went away after I left, and I didn't leave until 1962. Okay? It was a booming place. They wanted me. When I came back in 1966, I was set up to go to work in one of the mills that was still operating then. If I'd have stayed there, I'd have been figuring out what to do next. I probably wouldn't be retired. I'm 80 years old. You know, I mean, I can still see some of the people that I know when I was a kid, they're still working, you know. But that, I watched that happen, didn't realize it. Okay. Reagan realized it a little bit and he started it, but it didn't stop. It didn't hold.
A thought occurred to me as you've been talking to me. This is a new thought I've had just from what you're saying. So we had Democrats, we had Republicans, but I think from what you're saying, another thought, a group of thinking, rather than creating another party, came and took over the Democrat Party and then redefined it.
Yeah.
Instead of creating another party with their real agenda, whatever that is, they just hijacked the one that was already in place. And then that's how you got people like you that were like, hey, this is what it meant to be a Democrat.
Yes.
Based off of this, and this.
Yeah.
And then what it means to be a Democrat, and whenever that changed slowly,
yeah,
it's even more obvious today. This is what it means. You're like, that's very different from the Democrat of 20, 30, 40, 50 years ago.
Oh, absolutely.
When in really, they should have just created another party and been like, hey, this is where we lead. But they probably would have had limited success
mm-hmm.
if you create another party to be like this. So that I think it was that it got hijacked essentially.
Yes, it did.
By another way of thinking.
And another party would have never been able. An independent party doesn't work in this country.
Yeah.
It does. It never will.
It's like RFK. He's running.
Yeah. You know, I mean, I give him credit for trying to do something, you know, but it's never going to do it because nobody has ever. You can't win an election. You can't have enough people. If RFK was to win, who would even support anything he said? The Democrats wouldn't, neither would the Republicans.
And what's tough is going back to that George Washington quote,
sure,
where he warned against the two-party system. But it's like nothing's really going to get done if there's multiple parties.
Exactly.
So,
I mean, you look.
He warned against it, but then he didn't really have a solution because I looked and
yeah.
he was an independent.
Yeah.
He was the first president. And he was independent.
Yeah.
He was, and so I did some research, and back then it was the Federalists.
Yep.
Who were wanting to still have a. It's funny, they fought the War of Independence, but then they still wanted to have a cozy relationship with England.
Sure.
And it's like, then why did you go to war?
Yeah.
So that's funny. So that obviously that party no longer exists.
Well, it is in a sense because the Federalists, the Whigs, the Tories, and all those guys ended up becoming Democrats and Republicans.
Well, I did some
That's how
research.
did
So
that.
back then it was the Federalist.
Yeah.
And then it was called one party back then, the Democrat Republican Party. So they were one party.
Yeah.
And then so I did some research, and then they split off. It became the Jackson supporters, which was the Democrat Party, and their philosophy was promote greater democracy for the common man, which you said, expanding suffrage to all white men over the age of 21, regardless of property ownership, pushing for stronger executive branch, opposed the elitist economic policies that were associated with the Federalists and their successors. So advocating instead for less federal insight and over the economy and territories.
Yep.
So that's basically what you said. It was for the common man.
Sure.
And then the National Republican Party, which was the Whigs, but then later became the Republican Party, they advocate for strong central government policies that foster economic development. So you talked about that. Those were the guys that had money.
Yes.
Support tariffs, national banks, federally funded internal improvements like roads, canals, represented continuation of the economic nationalism, supportive of higher degree of federal intervention. So, I mean, you talked about that stuff.
Yeah.
And then the Whigs ended in 1850, and then it became more of the Republican Party with Abraham Lincoln.
Right. And it's not that either one of them, you know, I don't think you could add another party and make it work. I would never do that. They tried it with Perot.
Right.
Okay. Perot came close.
Yeah.
And something happened there, and I don't know exactly. I've heard different stories about, you know, somebody, told him he was going to do away his family and everything, and so he backed out. As a matter of fact, I almost voted for him. That was the beginning of when I started to question whether or not I should be a Democrat or a Republican.
And the thing about only having two parties is it's silly to think that people aren't more nuanced than that.
Yeah.
Right? To be like, to categorize, let's say you registered as a Democrat, to categorize you in the same as AOC,
Right.
right? You're both Democrats,
Yeah.
but your beliefs are so
Different.
probably different.
Yeah.
That's not fair to be either one of you.
Yeah.
And so, within each party, you have even different factions. But it's like, if you once you're lumped into one, you have to agree with everything. And you're like, no, I don't agree with the socialism that's coming up.
Right.
So,
Well, I think this year that the Republicans have hit on a pretty good idea. They have a certain promotion or a certain idea, and they're banging away at what hurts the individual American. And this could be a pivotal election as far as getting your head out of your butt and thinking about it. I mean, I still got people that are going to say, well, I'm not going to vote for Trump because he's a criminal. Phenomenal, he's a criminal, and that's, it's like he was convicted of a parking ticket that became a felony. I mean, I'm sorry. That was because it was in New York. If it would have gone down to Atlanta, Georgia, that wouldn't happen probably.
the crime of when they're saying he committed crime on the value of his assets.
Yeah.
That's like, okay.
I mean, give me a break here.
The bank that gave him the loan didn't cry about it.
Yeah, but all that stuff is nonsense as far as what they're doing. If you're looking at what's happening in this country right now,
so let me ask you
stay on the issues.
Let me ask you this: who did you vote for in 2016?
Trump.
You did. So
yes.
Who did you vote for in 2012? It was Obama. And
I can't remember if I voted only once for Clinton and never again for a Democrat. So
you've been on this journey.
Since
you've changed.
Clinton, yes, Clinton.
Okay, so
the second time of Clinton, the second running of Clinton, I didn't vote for him.
So for people here, I did some research on this. Wait, find the notes. Oh, all right. So in 2024, there are registered voters. So we have 49 million Democrats registered voters, 38 million registered Republicans, and 35 million independents. So most likely, majority of the Democrats, 49 of them, are going to vote blue no matter what.
Right.
They're always going to vote blue. And then of the 38 million of Republicans, most likely are going to continue to vote red.
Right.
So what I'm more interested in is the independent votes. That's 35 million, which is slightly under the Republican.
Yeah.
Wow. So those are the votes that I guess they're trying to persuade.
Yeah.
And so what got you to start thinking? Because a lot of times you get people in a particular party and they'll just stick with it. But what made you start thinking and opening up your mind to seeing things differently and realizing, hey, the beliefs that I had 20 years ago aren't the same. It's not the same party.
Well, it started probably with higher taxes. It had to do a little bit probably with when they started raising the gas prices up, and I'm not so much on the abortion type thing, because I'm goofy with the abortion. I mean, I don't think you should never not have an abortion. I think there's medical abortions, there's rape, there's incest, there's medical issues that require, I wouldn't want my wife to have a type of a pregnancy that could kill her. You'd have to weigh that between the two of you, and if it was definitely like what they call those ectopic
Yeah,
pregnancies or
I
something
would say
like that.
most people on the right. So for the listener, I'm independent,
Yeah,
but I would say most people on the right aren't talking about those scenarios. It's the other
yeah,
90% where it's
yeah.
like, I'm doing it because it's my body, my choice, versus everything else.
Your
But
body, yeah, your body, your choice. But I'm saying if you can kill a baby just before it's born, my thought is you should be hung for murder.
yeah,
I don't care.
that's a controversial point at one
Yeah,
point. But I don't want to get too much into
yeah,
that.
okay.
But it's really these independent voters that are going to, I think they're the ones that are going to every election they kind of sway back and forth. But there are, I think, more and more people on the left that are waking up and realizing, hey, the party that I joined, whatever age, is no longer the party that I recognize.
Exactly.
And I mean, there's a world where if your father was still alive, he would switch
I'm sure he would.
because he would be looking at what's going on and being like, wait a minute,
Yeah,
this is no longer for the common man.
yeah. I mean, I don't want you to tell me. I don't get somebody telling me that I have to do something.
Yeah.
Okay, and if I don't do something, then I'm an outcast. I'm wrong, and that's what the Democrat Party is telling me. You know, I don't know when it started. It started with probably, you know, school choice, stuff like that. I can remember when somebody said that they were going to have homeschool, they were going to homeschool people. I thought that was the dumbest idea in the world. And over the years, I've come to realize that's probably one of the smartest things that's ever happened. And if I had children that are your age, I would consider it, because I don't want somebody. I don't like what they're doing now. You know, I mean, listen to what they're doing. This is what the Democratic Party has done. They've gone completely crazy on stuff that, I mean, I'm sorry, but a kindergarten doesn't have to know what a transgender is. He'll learn that, or she'll learn that when they're old enough to understand it, and that's okay. Okay, I don't mind that. But I don't want you telling me that I'm going to send my kid to this school over here, and you don't have any choice. You know, this is the book he's going to read. You know, daddy and daddy's friend is the, you know. I don't buy that crap.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
And that wasn't the Democrat of.
And that wasn't the Democrats. And now it is.
Yeah.
I keep saying that as far as I'm concerned, you take the dumbest idea in politics, the dumbest, stupidest, most ridiculous idea, and the Democrat will support it. I can't have that.
Yeah.
I
That
can't
was your
vote
party.
that way. Yeah, that was my party. I can't vote that way. And do I agree with everything the Republicans do? Hell no, I don't. You know, I mean, I voted for Trump, and what he did was good. But there was times I kept thinking, why don't you just shut your mouth? You know, put a sock in it, Donald.
And here's what's interesting. The Trump of 2015 is very different than the Trump of 2024.
Yes.
And that's what they keep going back to, this Trump of 2015, who was very brass. I don't even think, he kind of ran as a joke
Yes.
in 2015. And then it was kind of like when Elon bought Twitter, it was a joke. He was talking to his girlfriend or ex or
Yeah.
whatever, and he was like, maybe I should buy this Twitter thing. And she's like, do it.
Yeah.
And he's like, okay. And then he's like, oh, wait, I actually have to buy it. And I think that was with Trump, where, like, so before most of the world knew about Trump, I went and listened to his biography, because I like before Epstein became big, I would listen to his biography. So I was aware of Trump before 2016, and I listened to his biography, and I can tell you right now, like, is that version of Trump, let's say 20 to 50 or whatever, is that someone that I would aspire to be like? Probably not. But the Trump of today is different from the Trump of even 10 years ago.
Yeah.
And even his working
8 years
career.
ago. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Even 8. I mean, he was in the casino business. Some of those businesses failed.
Yeah.
A lot of them actually did.
Yeah.
He was in the hotel business. He's actually had a lot of unsuccessful businesses. His probably most successful business was the branding of Trump.
Yeah.
Because he doesn't own a lot of these things that say Trump, He just licensed his name to it. So if you actually research him, it's like, interesting. Like, but I, as an independent voter, I'm willing to say people do evolve, just like
Yeah.
I've evolved.
Yeah.
I'm not the same person that I was 8 years ago.
No.
So I just wish and hope that people could look at the Trump today and realize he is not the same Trump of 2015, and definitely not the same Trump of him as a working
A
man.
young man or
Yeah.
a younger person.
From
Yeah.
his 20s to 60s,
Yeah.
right? So those 40 years, he's not that guy.
Yeah.
Especially after the assassination attempt, he's a totally different.
Totally different guy.
He still has some of his personality quirks,
Yeah.
but that changed him, right? Whether it was hit by shrapnel or a bullet, right?
Yeah.
That's controversial now. It's like, can you grade him on who he is today?
Yes.
And that's what's difficult for people. Like, I'm getting hit up with all these ads.
Yeah.
Right. And here's what's interesting. They already changed the Harris ad. So once they coordinated her and said she's going to be the nominee, her first ad was Trump is an existential threat.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, define that. What does that mean? And you know what she said today? They took out that term because they realized that term is more hindering than benefiting. Because when you go that extreme, that gets people to wake up, right?
Yeah.
It's like the frog in the boiling pot.
Yeah.
If you turn it up hot right away,
He's going to jump out.
people are going to be like, wait a minute, that's extreme rhetoric.
Yeah.
But if you just say Trump is a threat, then it's like, oh, okay. So they're
Tweaking it down.
tweaking the message, but it's like, why don't you use your ads to talk about what you're going to do,
Yeah.
right? You're so concerned about this boogeyman, right?
Yeah.
Talk about what you're going to do. Like, I actually want to know what are your plans?
Yeah.
Like, as an independent voter, stop telling me. It's like in sports,
Right.
right? If
Well, tell me how good you are. Show me.
right, if it's the championship game,
Yeah.
and you're the whole time you're talking smack about the other team, no one's gonna be worried about you because you're like, what do you got? What do you bring to the table?
Yeah.
So tell me what you're gonna do,
Yeah.
right? So that's what I wish people would do. It's whether you're left, right, or center, or middle, or independent, whatever. Look at the facts today. Don't ride the emotional. Oh, he's an existential threat, and it's like, hey, what does that even mean?
Exactly. It's if you look at what Joe Biden was saying, Trump is saying, when I get into office, I'm going to drill for oil. I'm going to put the wall up, and I'm going to stop the immigration. What else is he saying? He's saying, I'm going to hit inflation. I'm going to make inflation go down. I'm going to take on the war machines, and I'm going to put them on. I don't hear that coming from the Democrat Party.
You don't know what they're gonna do.
All they're saying is Trump's evil. Okay. Well, Trump is telling me, Trump says he's going to get my grocery bill down. I came back from a month-long vacation. I had to go fill up my refrigerator. It cost me $380. Never did under Trump. Now, you tell me that's a good economic situation? I'm going to tell you just what I think of you.
Yeah.
So
here's the you kind of hit on it, but I researched what were the 5 top policies from 2016 Trump and 2020 Biden. So Trump was immigration reform, trade policy. He promoted America First. He's the one that talked about NAFTA.
Yep.
Favored imposing tariffs to protect American industries. Economic policy. Let's figure out tax cuts, particularly for businesses. Figure out job creation, economic growth, healthcare reform, and then foreign policy and national security. So those are his top 5. Joe Biden's in 2020 was COVID response, emphasizing science-based approach, increasing testing and vaccine distribution, climate change, economic recovery, build back better, whatever they build. Who knows what they built. Healthcare expansion, and then racial equity.
What is that?
So
What is that?
if you're an independent voter, please look at these policies and be like, okay, which ones are going to move the needle, right? And it's like, there's a group out there that's like, this is funny. So there was, some people are against, capitalism.
Yeah.
And so this coffee shop opened up a business. That means you're capitalistic, right?
Yeah.
But they didn't have any pricing. You paid whatever you want. So they wanted it to run like it was socialist.
Mhm.
they went out of business, right?
Yeah.
Because if you don't have pricing and you don't have some kind of standard, it's hard to run a business.
Yeah.
And so, if you want to have all these social issues taken care of by the government, that's controversial. Who should take care of it? Should it be the
Yeah.
private sector or should it be the government? But at the end of the day, you have to have money to do any of those things. So if I'm thinking through these things logically, it's like, well, what's going to put money in my pocket and other people's pocket so that we have money to do those things? I think that should drive one of your main concerns is
Right.
money.
And the unfortunate thing about that is in politics, they have an ever-ending supply. It's us. Okay? If they need more money, they just go print it. All right? And
Okay.
I listen to these people tell me they're going to have free medical care and free college and all that. Where are you going to get the money? Who's going to pay for that? Okay? Somebody has got to work. And if you don't have the job and you can't afford it, who's going to take care of that? It's the people that they're screwing over when they start talking about that kind
And
of
these
stuff.
were topics that weren't discussed 40 years ago,
They're not successful now.
right? But they weren't even discussed 40 years ago?
Yeah.
Was that
No.
even a concern? Or back then, was it work hard
Yeah.
and see where it gets you?
It was like, I grew up with 9 friends of mine. 8 of them went to college, and I went to the Air Force. I didn't want to go to school. Okay? They all are successful people. One of them, Stanley Gorgas, was the guy that made the Ziploc bag. I mean, he's real successful. And there's a Frank is a nuclear engineer or something like that, and and the rest of them, most of them were school teachers. They were math teachers. Gene was a college professor. He got his he went all the way to his doctor's degree. So and all these guys, all my friends are successful. A few of them now are passed away. They're not with us, but when they went to school, there was no grants. There was nothing. They paid for it, and if you couldn't afford it, you didn't go. My family couldn't afford me to go. I knew they couldn't afford for me to go. So when I went into the service with the intentions of making a career out of it, I knew that was wrong probably an hour and a half after I got in, but maybe even less.
Can I undo that signature? I wonder how many service members have that initial thought, especially if there's no active war. They're like,
yeah, it's 20 years.
First.
It was going to be 20 years. I was going to get out. And then I realized I had that guy that was up there, and he make me do things I really didn't want to do. I don't like that.
Yeah, I think we talked about that.
It was probably the best 4 years of my life. And it grew me up. I mean,
Mature. I did a podcast with the guy, and
Yep.
he talked about once he went to Vietnam, it
Yeah.
matured him.
it did.
Right? It would have been a different experience if he didn't go to war and if he just hung out in America for 4 years. He probably would have matured somewhat.
You would have matured. The maturity level in that is, I went in when I was 17 years old. Okay, I worked as a paper boy, when I was because one of the neighbors asked me to help him with his son, and I was a paper boy for 4 or 5 years, and all I had to do was just pick, do the paper route, and then I went to work for my uncle, which was nothing. I mean, he was a grunt. I was building houses, helping him build houses. And then at the end of that little bit, I went into the service. When you go into the service, you don't talk, you don't go up in this way. Well, you know what? I don't want to clean that latrine. That's not what I want to do. You go do it, and somebody tells you to go do something, and you go right now and you learn discipline. Basically, discipline is you had to do things, and it got to be almost fun. I loaded nuclear weapons on B-52s, and we at one time, there was 4 of us, and we were sort of the outcast crew. I mean, we got into trouble. We did a few things here and there. And got Article 15s and stuff like that.
You did?
Yeah.
How many of those did you get?
I got one, but 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 we ended up being there was one kid, Ray Ford. He was straight. He was the only one. So me and Kim was the one that were the two guys that got probably in the most trouble. I mean, Kim and Ray and myself, and then we had this little black guy named Tom Beard, and he was about 5'2", and we nicknamed him the Admiral, as he was the Admiral, right? Everybody in our division called him the Admiral, but he was the Admiral. What Beard said, what Tom did, what he said, went. He was our chief, and we had another guy named big black guy. He was our safety supervisor, and he had a big scar down over there. He was a tough guy, you know, man. Those two guys, and they were best friends. And they said, we want you guys to be the best load crew in Strategic Air Command. And so the three of us, Ray, Kim, and I, we started contributing everything that we did. There was never a time when you just stand and did nothing, you know, because if you needed a ladder over there and I did nothing, I got the ladder and put it over there so that you could turn around, step on that ladder and go and do what you needed to do, you know? And we worked that way. We would do that every load that we ever made on a B-52. And I'll never forget it. They had this crew, you know, the elite guys that was in our division, and they were loading these bombs, and they were loading them in 42 minutes, 43 minutes, 44 minutes, you know, and they were just, you know, top dogs, right? We were loading the same unit that they were loading. We were loading it in 33 minutes. Because they didn't know what we were doing, right?
You're doing it super efficient.
And so
yeah, so there's definitely benefits of military, but
it was great.
I question the military of today, but that's a whole nother conversation.
Well, that's yeah. I don't question the military today. I question the people leading the military today, not the military. I mean, the guys that are in the military are just like you and me. They still, you know, those guys still need to run into the war zone. They do that.
Need those guys, but
yes,
the ones leading it.
Yeah, they're goofy.
Hopefully they figure that out.
Yeah.
So, you know, I listened to a lot of podcasts, and one of the podcasts I was listening to was saying by the time a man is 35, or woman, he's pretty set in his ways, mentally, emotionally, physically, spiritually. It's very difficult to change that human being. But you did. You changed the way you thought about politics.
Before that, though.
I know.
Yeah.
Well, how did you get to how do we get people, let's say people that are older and younger, to start questioning, not that you have to vote, I don't care which way you vote, but to at least question, especially if you're older. Don't get comfortable just because something has been done a certain way. How do we get them to question what's being said and have some critical thinking skills?
Well, I think what you have to do,
you did that.
You have to be able to, I think you have to be able to think for yourself a little bit. I mean, is what's happening in the world around you, politics, no matter whether you want to watch it or not, politics affects you every day. Some people say, I'm not going to watch the news. I don't want to hear what's going on. It doesn't matter. Okay. When you go down to the gas station to fill that car up, politics is what's making it be $4.50 a gallon for diesel.
And instead of watching,
whether you watch the news or not,
how
you're
much
doing
of that
it.
is affected by taxes?
Well,
especially in Washington,
quite a bit in Washington. But again, it doesn't matter. It's politics that did it for you. I mean, why is it that you have to raise the gas prices up in order to build a train that nobody's going to use? Okay, you know. I mean, all that kind of stuff happens. And if you don't think that, if you don't look at that, if you don't sit back and say to yourself, wait a minute, those guys are, you know, you're gonna tell me that I'm gonna have to you know, pay for this for 40 years, and 25 of them I might be dead. You know, I'm sorry.
So here's some interesting stats. And again, this is facts. This is not me making stuff up. Mm-hmm. But I wanted to do some research on the demographic of people that are voting. And so here's what's interesting. Females tend to vote Democratic. in the most recent elections. So, single female vote was predominantly Democratic. Single male vote was leaning more towards Republican. Married votes favored Donald Trump. Um, this trend was stronger for married men than married women. Overall, female voters were more likely to support Clinton, whereas male voters are more likely to vote for Trump. So that's interesting that the the female vote. And so in 2020, again, it was single female vote continued to support Democrat Joe Biden. So that's something that if you are on the right, you have to consider that. Um, I know with after the assassination attempt, people think Trump's got it. He's got it in the bag, but it's like,
He doesn't have it in a bag.
yeah, but a lot of people have that, and it's
yeah.
like, well, you have to look at the numbers, and there are more females than males right now in the U.S. population, and the data shows that they generally tend to vote blue over red.
Well,
And if they're single, then it's not even close. It's like 60-30 blue versus red if you're a single female.
well, again, I mean, you can't get with naivety. Let me say naivete. Okay, they're naive, and the fact is that they're emotional, and you show somebody on the tube that is having a tough time, and a woman's emotional of it, and a guy can look at it and say, well, change the way you're doing things. I mean, get off your duff and work. But females are except for my wife. My wife not that way. My wife is a pretty staunch conservative.
Again, I'm not trying to. Again, obviously, there's women that vote red. Obviously, there's single women that vote red. What the data is showing though is it's not like 99-1.
Yeah,
It's 60% and higher are voting one way or the other, and right now they're showing more blue than red.
Hi, how are you doing?
Good.
he's out here doing some stuff.
You okay?
I think I think what's happening, and you're right about the single women and women in general, but most of the women are feeling the effect of what's happening, especially with their money now. Okay, and I think that you're going to see a change in that direction. I was shocked, and I was back in Pennsylvania. I was back in Ohio, and two people that one he was an older gentleman. He was probably 60ish, in that general vicinity. He was working as a janitor type in a motel we were staying in, and he just come up and started talking to me, and he was concerned about the.
You can keep talking.
Is it getting too loud?
Yeah.
Probably won't stop it too much. Anyway, he just come up and asked me a question, and he says, "What do you think?" He says, "I can't believe what's going on around here. I'm going to vote for Trump."
And this was another lifelong Democrat.
Yeah, and he says, and he says, this might be the first time, but and he says, I just can't vote for the Democrat anymore. And the lady that was in the bottom of this, she was an older lady too. She said the same thing to me. She just came up and told me, she says, I don't know how you feel. The television show was on. She said, I'm voting for Trump the next time, And in the third person that we went into a penny store in Cincinnati. Jen had to get something, and we got our stuff and we were walking in, and I saw this one young, I don't know if she was black or not, but she had a backpack on, right? And the black lady that was behind the counter was just staring at her, just watching her, she and I watched the lady for quite some time, because Jen had to go to the bathroom, and I watched, and she was looking at that phone everywhere she went. And when I come up to her, we had to get something. I walked up to her and I says, you pretty much take care of the security around here. I says, you're eyeballing that girl pretty good. You know, he goes, yeah, she's been in here before. She steals. She says, I can't believe this. She says, I can't wait for Trump to get in there. He says, we'll get rid of them kind of people. And here it is, you know, I mean,
Yeah.
3 different people. I did not bring the subject up.
Yeah.
I did not ask what their politics were or anything. And they just said,
and I'm hearing that more is there are a lot of people that were voting blue
yeah,
that this year are thinking of voting differently.
yeah.
They're waking up to whatever it is they're waking up to.
I
But
don't know where that went.
it'll be interesting to see how it plays out.
Well,
in these
yeah,
elections.
I don't know whether it will or not, but that was interesting for me. Even my wife and I both talked about it. It was something that 3 different people came up and started talking to you, and they all said the same thing. They're tired of what's going on, and I think there's a lot of people that are tired of what's going on. I mean, listen to the news at night tonight. I mean, what do they do? You know, the first 10 minutes, it's how many people were shot in Seattle today, you know?
Yeah. So let me get your response on this for people that are on the fence or on the blue or independent. There's a lot of talk out there of saying Biden is fascist or Trump.
Ah.
And so I looked that up. Let's define fascism. If Trump is this, it's someone that is authoritarian, dictatorial, extreme nationalism, disdain for a democratic process, and suppression of political opposition. For you, who is a lifelong Democrat, have you seen this kind of behavior from Trump?
No.
Severe economic and social regimentation, forcible suppression of opposition. That's what they're calling him, right? They're calling him Adolf Hitler.
Right.
So they're saying he has authoritarian rhetoric. They don't like him saying fake news. They're saying he's politically violent, and this is the interesting one. They're saying he believes in populism, nationalism. It's like, well, if you're in America, shouldn't you like being in America?
Yeah, I would think so.
Is there something wrong with being patriotic?
Yeah. It is in a Democratic Party. Patriotism in a Democratic Party is not good. You're not good.
So what do they believe?
Well, they believe that the social part of the commitment that they're into is the only way forward. They're communists, and you know, they won't say they're communists, but if you look at what they want, that's exactly what it is. They want the government to run everything. Everything in your life is going to be perfect if you allow the government to lead you on. What does that give you? Makes you a serf.
Yeah. And what's interesting about that is there's plenty of case study out there, right? Let's look at Russia. Let's look at South American countries that show you what happens when you live like that. Today, I was in a sauna, and this guy came in, tatted up, and I have nothing against tattoos. And we struck up a conversation. He had an accent, and I asked him where he's from. And he said Russia. And so I said, how do you feel about Putin and the Russian people? He's like, the Russian people are great. I just don't like the government. And he's like, you could say the same thing about America. The average American's great. I just don't always like what's going on in the government because the government's supposed to represent the people, but that doesn't seem to quite happening right now. And here's something he said that was very interesting. He said, I was like, would you prefer to live in Russia or in America? He said America, 100%, because at least in America, we're not as corrupt. We're not as, you are still able to kind of live within your freedom. There is no 100% freedom, right? Just like tomorrow I have to renew my driver's license because in order for me to drive, I have to show, there's things you have to do to participate in society.
Yeah.
So there is no 100% free nation. Every nation has rules.
But you have the opportunity. If you don't want to drive something with it, you could get a bicycle and drive it.
Yeah. And so it's interesting talking to him, and we were talking about that, and he's like, the problem with a lot of these Americans is they don't know how good they have it, right? They don't appreciate what they have. All they can do is talk about how bad America is, And it's like, well, partly because they don't know anything different, especially if you're younger, especially if you are, like you said, maybe a little bit more naive, have less experience. And how do you gain that knowledge and experience or perspective? A, you can leave the country, or B, read books about it. And then you can see, like, oh, this is what happens when you go down this path, right? It's not theoretical what happened in USSR,
No.
right? Just talk to someone, especially depending on what state you're in. I married a Russian, so if you just talk to people, you'll meet someone that's lived in other countries.
Where you can even look at it, I mean, how many people are beating down Russia's border to get into it? And how many people are coming into the United States?
Right.
Why are you coming? If the United States is such a rotten place to live, why did 10 million of them come in the last 3 years?
Yeah.
I don't see 10 million Americans leaving, going someplace. You know?
They're leaving certain states.
Well, yeah, I'd leave this state in a minute if I could, but you know, I mean, I get it. And there again, you know, why would I leave this state? Look at the politics of it.
Yeah.
Look at the politics of it.
So, I wanted to hit on a few last things, and then if you had any last thoughts. But I looked up to see what is an archetype of a current Democrat voter. They tend to be urban, with higher concentrations of diverse population, liberal social values, younger voters, young adults, college, university, influenced by progressive attitudes towards social issues. It's a lot of these social things. Minorities, for whatever reason, African American, Hispanics, Asian Americans, due to its advocacy for civil rights and immigration reform. And then it's higher education levels. Individuals with higher education, especially those with college and postgraduates, emphasizing, again, social welfare. And then the professionals in science and academia. So that seems to be archetype. So you've got really poor people, you've got minorities, and then you've got the theoretical with the higher educations, and then they've taken over the science and academia. And then Republican archetype now is rural residents, which is like it's the working man with conservative values, older votes, and then you have higher income individuals, military families, and then religious groups.
Yeah, and you know, you if you look at what you're saying is in the Democratic Party, basically you have a two-tiered system. You have an elite system with a lot of people with a lot of money, which they want to keep. But what you need is the, you know, the black, the Mexican, the you know, whatever they are, the people that are coming in from the third world country people. They need them in here to vote for that. And how they do that is they offer them money. I mean, watch any of the people that they interview coming across. What are they doing it for? They're coming here because they're going to get money. You know, they're going to get schooling. They're going to get, you know, they're going to have a good place to live. And I get it. If I was living in a shack someplace down in Guatemala, and somebody says, come up here and you can live in an apartment in New York City, I'd be going in a minute. You know, I mean, and I get it. I get what they're doing. And I don't blame those people for coming. But what I do think is they're sending a lot of the people they don't want either.
Well, that's what one of the presidents of one of those countries said.
Yeah.
We emptied our prisons.
Yeah.
We sent them a one-way ticket to North Mexico.
Yeah, North Mexico. Yeah.
So that they can't cross.
Or South New Mexico and South Arizona.
Yeah. Yeah, so interesting times.
Interesting it is.
You know, I think the assassination attempt did put a lot of people on the fence. It did sway them a lot. I mean, even Zuckerberg recently, he said that incident changed his perspective. The Rock, I mean, you have these celebrities that in 2020 were hard for Biden.
Well,
The Rock is,
yeah.
you know, he has influence.
Yeah.
You have people that probably would have been afraid to throw in the hat to one, especially to the Republican Party. You're having them not be afraid so much. But I guess what would you say to the working man that is just busy in the everyday life? Why should they care about these things?
Well, I have to think the good thing about the time that we're living in now is we have rational thinking people can look back 8 years and tell themselves, were you better off 8 years ago? Was you better off before 2020, or are you better off from 2020 to 2024? Check your wallet. Okay? If you're better off than you were from 20 to 24, vote for a Democrat, because those are the people that are leading you. If not, get your head out of your butt and figure out what you should do. And if you can't get your head out of your butt because you're too stupid to change policies because you're a Democrat and you've been a lifelong Democrat, and I got a couple of them idiots in my family, then go ahead. There's nothing I can do for you. But think about your kids and your grandkids. What are they going to have? Because those are the people that they're the ones that's going to be worse off. Not me, 10 years from now, if I'm lucky to be alive. How many 90-year-olds Not probably very many.
Yeah, I'm trying to get them to be guests on my podcast. It's hard.
But you got, I'm looking down the tunnel. I can see the light at the end of the tunnel. I know it's a train. I just hope it's going slow.
Yeah.
So, but behind me is a 17-year-old and a 21-year-old, What are they going to be like in 60 years? What's it going to be like for them in 60 years? I hope they're here. I know, and I hope that they are smart enough to understand what they should do and how they should be taken seriously. Do you think that the United States is going to be the same United States you have right now 60 years from now?
Yeah, it's gonna look different. I mean, technology will play a part in that.
Think about what I seen in the last 60 years. 60 years ago, okay? 60 years ago, I was graduating high school.
No computer, no internet,
no cell phone, no electric car.
What was the modern technology when you were graduating high school? What was the cutting edge back then?
Probably stereo music, a stereo record player or radio.
So record player.
Yeah, a record player.
TV wasn't even out yet.
Well, TV was there. Yeah,
TV was out.
Maybe color TV. Color TV was it was pretty good size. I think when I came out here, I still had a black and white. But I came out here in 1967. So I don't know if my mother and father had a color TV set. I don't know when they got it.
Yeah, things have changed a lot. And what's funny about thinking about the future, because we don't know what technologies are going to be about, it's hard to imagine that future. But for anyone that's listening, if you've been a lifelong whatever party you at, always be willing to reconsider your position. Don't just accept it for what it is, and realize that that party can change. And most likely, me as an independent, it's like I try to look at things objectively and say, from what you're telling me and from the research that I've done, the term Democrat has changed and evolved.
If you want
not the same.
Yeah, it's not the same. If you want to look at your voter pamphlet and see who is affording the people that you want to vote for, and vote accordingly. Okay? Because no matter what they say, no matter what party they're in, I'll look. There's some Republicans. I didn't give to the Senate Republican campaign committee this year. I usually do, and I didn't, because there are some senators I don't want them in there. They're Republicans. I don't care if they're a win or not, and because I see who's supporting him. Who are their benefactors? Okay, benefactors. I'm not buying into that load.
And that's encouraging to hear, and it's also what I would tell people. It's I shouldn't know everything about you by knowing one thing about you. Meaning, if I know you are, again, this is no judgment, but if I know you have a certain hair color,
Yeah.
I'm going to know a lot about you just by knowing that one
Yeah.
thing.
Yeah.
And so I would just encourage people to be nuanced. I'm already, like, when people see me, I'm already a puzzle to figure out because they're like, who's this guy? Because it's hard to judge me.
Yeah.
It's hard to, so that it already makes it easy for me. But again, you should have nuanced beliefs about certain things. I shouldn't be able to be like, because I know this about you, I know where you stand on all those things.
Yeah.
It's like you should be a little bit more complex than that.
Oh yeah, you do. You know, I mean, you have to. There's.
And you're not even identifying as a staunch Republican. You're just saying, hey, in 2024, I'm voting for Trump.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying I like every Republican that's out there.
No,
you're not
I
saying
don't.
you dislike every Democrat out there. You're just saying in 2024, I'm looking at the facts at where they stand, and I'm going to vote for the Trump man.
I voted. I didn't vote straight Republican. The guy who's running this Snohomish County, oh God, I can't think of his name right now. Doggone it. Anyway, he's a Democrat, and I've talked to him, and I've watched what he's done. He's a member of our club down there. You know, he is a Democrat, but he doesn't believe in all of the garbage that the Democrats put out. But he's still a Democrat, you know. But I cannot not vote for him because he's made decisions that I think were good decisions.
And it's maybe sometimes he identifies as a Democrat because he knows he wouldn't have made it as a Republican.
Yeah.
So you have a lot of those guys that, because there's only two parties, it's like, okay, who has a higher chance of...
Right. We used to have what we call blue dog Democrats, okay? A good Democrat was Scoop Jackson and Walter and what was the other guy's name? I can't think of his name.
I was
Right?
aware of this.
Yeah, he was Scoop. Henry Jackson was a Democrat, and he was a conservative all the way when it comes to the military and the patriotic part of the country, and he was a socialist Democrat. So, you know, I mean, he had intelligence. I mean, he just wouldn't say, well, we're going to give $1 billion to these clowns over here just because we got them and we want to give it to them. You know, you had to convince him that there was a reason that you gave that person money. Well, that's all I ask. I don't ask for you to be, but you don't do that with the Democratic Party. The Democratic Party is on the line. You know, that picture of that turkey head over there is green and white, and it's green and white, and you say it's green and white, and I say it's green and white. And we all know that it's red and white, but it's still green and white.
Yeah.
You know, I don't buy that crap. I don't, and that's the other thing that bothers me about a Democrat. Even though you know, I mean, how in the world can you look at 10 million people crossing the border and look me in the eye and tell me the border is secure? Do you think I'm that stupid?
It's gaslighting.
I mean, you know, and you want me to vote for that party? I would be looking at, I'd have somebody look at me and say, look, they should, if you can vote for the Democrat, they should have a great big statue in front of my house saying, this is the dumbest bastard that walked on the face of the earth. Yeah?
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
No, don't apologize, because we need people to... in life, you need emotion.
Yeah.
Right? Because if you don't have any emotion, then it's not very fun and enjoyable, but you also need some logic.
Yeah.
That's all I ask is please have some logic in the choices that you're making.
Yeah. I mean, tell me that you're these people are coming in and if you do what you say you're doing, you're vetting them and you're looking at them, you're not doing anything. You're letting them walk through the gates and you're just saying, here, get out of here, go, you know. You lie to me and you tell me you're doing things that you're not, and then you expect me to support you. I can't do that. I can't do that anymore. I don't do that anymore.
And what's interesting, even about Trump, he was a Democrat as well.
Yes.
So he himself left
Yeah.
that party.
Yeah. Wait, Ronald Reagan was a Democrat, and he left the party too, and he became a Republican. Why? You know?
Yeah. And what will be funny is once he's done being president, it'd be funny if he went back to being a Democrat. that would be funny.
That would be funny. I would wonder how they would accept him in there.
Yeah. Well, you could just register, and I doubt he'd be as involved and put into politics. But
I don't think they will.
what I encourage people to do is look at the individual for who they are today,
That's right.
and grade them on who they are today, because he's not the same guy he was 9 years ago.
Yeah, I can't vote for somebody. I can't vote for somebody because they're a black, or they're a woman, or they're gay, or they're not gay, or they're a Catholic or a Jew or a Protestant or anything like. I can't look at that. That doesn't mean anything. That it's what they stand for and what they are, and what they're going to do and how they're going to lead. Can you imagine? I'm sorry, but can you imagine Kamala Harris meeting with Putin or Xi and them taking her serious? Is she going to laugh when they say something to her? Yeah. I mean, how can you? I'm sorry. You got to have some. You have to have some credibility too. It's like you wouldn't vote for me for president either, because I don't have that either. Because I'm probably just the other way. And I'm fuck. I get more trouble than I'd be worth. But that's the same thing. But you have to have a person that can make sure that the leaders of this world understand that, when I say something, I'm serious about it. And if you look at Trump right now, when he says something, he's pretty serious about it. He's done it. Okay? 4 years ago, he did it. He stopped it. We didn't, I bet I'd like to know how many GIs were killed in his administration, his whole 4 years. I know his last couple of years, I don't think anybody was killed.
Yeah, he didn't start any new wars. He was trying to.
He didn't start any, and he ended them. And I bet if you look at you could put his. I think I've never done it, and I don't know that you can. And I don't know what you would get if you did, but I don't think he said what he said he was going to do, and he did it, and we all prospered with it. So I look at that and I say, do you want to go back? Yeah, I do. Because I don't want to pay $380 for 4 bags and 5 bags of groceries anymore. I don't want to go up there and spend, $105 for 21 gallons of diesel. I don't want to do that.
All right, let's see what it says. Yeah, look at where you're at today.
Yeah.
Is what I hear you're saying, and try to look at it logically. And don't just.
If you're better off today from the last than 4 years before.
Yeah. And don't be so easily persuaded by a celebrity.
Oh,
Taylor Swift.
I wouldn't go across the street to see one of them.
Because they're saying these celebrities, if they endorse someone, that could be millions.
Yeah. What I mean, I enjoyed athletics. I liked football, and I like baseball, and I enjoy music, and I love country music. So I wouldn't go across the street to some of these people.
To answer your question about how many troops died under President Trump versus Obama. Here's what's interesting. So it said only 65 troops died in combat, in contrast to Obama's presidency, which was obviously during the war. So significantly more casualties. But it wouldn't give me a number.
Yeah, significantly more.
Significantly more.
But they gave you a number for Trump.
Yeah, 65.
65.
Which is...
That's 4 years, 65 people died, I mean? Think about the military and what they must think. I mean, yeah, 13 died just trying to get out of Afghanistan. I don't know how many other ones there was, but there's been some more that was killed under in the bombings during the Israeli Gaza thing, and when they
Another thing to end on this note is I encourage, if you're an older listener, please sit down and have conversations with your kids and grandkids. So I don't know if they're having those conversations because they're saying younger voters who obviously had to come from someone, right? Because one thing you mentioned earlier was, where are these kids learning? Where are they getting indoctrinated at the schools, right? So the public school systems or the private school system, wherever, they are teaching kids a certain way. Kids don't just come out, they're influenced a certain way. Like my 11-year-old just ran a 5K in 19 minutes and 36 seconds.
Wow.
That's faster than high school girls.
Yeah.
The reason why I know that, because they ran the race and he beat them.
Yeah.
High school girls, my 11-year-old's faster than. And how did he get to that point? Because I influenced that behavior. He had natural ability because dad runs and I go run and he runs with me. Now he's going to be influenced to be able to do that.
Exactly.
And so if they're saying young people generally are more on the left, that means they were influenced into that. They weren't born, oh, I'm going to be on the left. There was influence to that. And so if you're an older individual, then I would encourage you to have conversations, especially with your loved ones, about these things so that they at least get to see another side of perspective.
The other part of that is, and you're on the right direction, you know, I can sit here and I can tell you that I was never going to do some of the things that my dad did, right? And there are times I catch myself almost saying the same thing he said, you know. I'm looking around saying, I didn't think I'd ever do that. But I was influenced by what he did. My mother too. You know, I mean, I had great parents but I had great parents that, you know, if I messed up, I understood the difference between being good and not being good. And when my father didn't have to do any hard discipline, all he had to do was raise and lower his eyebrows.
Yeah, that's a whole other conversation with parenting.
Parenting is the only way, and it's the only way you can teach really. You know, if you want to teach people politics, you teach them tough love. I have a granddaughter, and I laughed the other day. You know, and this is the exact statement that she said. My wife said, "Well, you know, you're home from college, you know." She's going to Boise State, and I said, "You're home from college, so it's good, you know." She says, "Are you going to get a job?" She goes, "Yeah, I'm going to look for a job." She says, "Well, your dad got, you know, the kids that work, you know, the boys that work for the Philibom, you know, they got good jobs. They're like making $60 an hour, you know. He can hire them to do roofing jobs and stuff like that." He says, "Your dad could get you a job." And she looked at my wife and she says, "I don't do hard labor." I don't do hard labor. You might.
So I did have a question. We're almost done, or we are done pretty much. But so, you know how we have tech jobs now?
Yeah.
So 40 years ago, there was blue collar, but then what else was there?
Well, we had white collar jobs. I mean,
it was just like the doctor. It was the professions.
Yeah, they were like the engineers. I can remember.
So what were they? Were they Democratic or Republican? White collar.
Well, I would say pretty much they were still Democrat. I'm pretty sure. I don't know. I don't know what you would call it, because I worked for SPIA in Boeing, and they were your white collar. They were the tech, kind of the tech people when I got out of college. That was in '72. Now, I was still a Democrat back then. So, and I was in SPIA, but I didn't realize.
When you came across a Republican, did you have disdain for them?
I didn't have
your emotions or feelings.
I just thought they were wrong. You know, I mean, I feel the same way. I don't have disdain for Democrats neither. I just think that they're wrong. Mm-hmm. Their ideas are just not right. I mean, you can have them, but prove that they're right. You know, I can look at the same ideas that I have, and I can say that, you know, I don't want to pay, you know, $5 a gallon for diesel. I think we don't have to do that. And the reason why we are doing it is because somebody got mad and decided to change the rule, quit drilling oil for us, and then they started buying oil from other countries and making them rich. And then when that didn't work right, what did they do? They took the money, they took all the oil out of the reserves, the federal reserves, and made it look like they're drilling oil.
Yeah.
So that to me that's not right. And if you can, and I can tell you that and feel good about saying that those are the kind of people I don't want around. If you don't believe me, go check it out. Or if you don't believe me and you don't care, then you got to vote for people.
And that's using logic with emotion.
Yeah.
Right. And it's not wrong to have emotions, and that's something I try to teach my kids. And is I want you to be passionate about whatever, but have some logic mixed in with it. Where right now, if you try to get into a discussion with someone, it can get emotional without logic.
Yeah. And they get mad.
And I've had a few of those in the sauna.
Oh yeah.
It's already heated.
Yeah.
And then you get even more heated. And then this one guy started insulting me. He was a firefighter.
Yeah.
And I was like, you should have a little bit more respect for yourself. You should be able to, if you feel a certain way about something, use your big boy words.
Yeah.
Versus resorting to saying you're going to beat me up.
Yeah.
And he resorted to like what you could do in a playground.
Yeah.
With kids.
He's a bully.
Yeah, and I was just like, you're a firefighter, man? Like,
yeah,
I would not want to come across you because,
yeah.
I mean, it seemed like, I think he was on steroids as well, so that's not helpful.
Yep.
But just, again, try to use some logic. I'm not against you having emotion.
Yep.
But just have some logic in that conversation.
I also don't like the guys that try to bait me either. I mean, there's a few people that I know, that all they want to do is they want to say something to get under your skin. I do not do well with that. I stay away from those kind of people. I have one person in my family like that I don't get into conversations with him because, first of all, I don't want to mess over family things. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because I could probably bury him pretty easy, but if I bury him, there's going to be hard feelings, and I don't need that, So I stay away from people like that. And if I feel like somebody is baiting me that way, I'll back off of them because it's not good for me to lose my temper.
Yeah, but again,
because you when you lose your temper, you're
it's all emotion, no logic.
Yeah, you're dumb when you do that. I mean, your train of thought goes crazy, and you don't make any sense half the time. I'll tell you what, my son is good at that. My son can bury people so easy, and he never gets angry, but he's logical, and he asks questions, and pretty soon you can't answer them, and then pretty soon you get, I don't want to talk to this guy.
Yeah. So this is my last. Do you know who Jordan Peterson is?
Who?
Jordan Peterson.
No, I don't know that name.
So, very intellectual guy. He's Canadian, and he was having a sit down with Dave Ramsey.
I know that name. Yes.
He's the financial
guy. Yeah.
So they're having. It's kind of like a podcast, but with an audience.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the questions were like, well, what do you do if someone believes differently than you? Or what do you do if someone just totally sees things differently? And Ramsey's response was, I just ignore them. It's not worth my time and energy. And Jordan Peterson pushed back. And he said, there is a point of you don't throw pearls to swine. But you want to be able to articulate what it is you believe. And here's why. You can live the life that you want. It's helpful if you can articulate it, because if you can't, then someone who is more articulate than you can come and then can gaslight you, can call you names, can say all these things about you, and you don't have a way to counter respond to that. And so he pushed back on him, and he was like, if you ignore them, or if you don't know why you believe what you believe, then you will be more swayed because you'll be like, man, that's a really good argument. I don't know why I do this. Let me go do that. And so it challenged me to be like, yeah, that's why I keep pushing myself, getting different perspectives, because I want to be able to articulate with someone that has a totally different belief system than me, but also be able to defend myself so that for myself or for my kids or for my immediate family or circle is knowing why I believe what I believe, so that I'm not so easily gaslit,
Yeah.
right? Or so easily persuade one way or the other, because that's what they're doing in these colleges, right? They're convincing kids intellectually this and this, and then the parents aren't there to be like, well, they don't have a way to articulate it better, so then the young people, they're easily persuaded one way or the other.
Yeah.
Right? They don't have that life experience.
I'm not real sure that you can really. I think the teacher aspect, both in high school, grade school, and college, have a control over the students that is not. It's not fair in one respect. If I think that's a bad teacher that tries to influence the kids in their direction. You're not teaching anybody. You're indoctrinating them when you're doing that. And a good teacher listens to both sides and lets them make the decision. But in some cases, the kids can't do that. I mean, I've
Well,
not very often.
They don't know any better.
Well, they don't know any better. But even if they do, if in some cases, if they say to the teacher, "You're wrong," and I believe that it should be this way and not the way you're saying, then their grade goes down once or and in some cases, in some areas where you're, especially in a medical field, you can't have that. You can't. You almost have to capitulate to that teacher's whim, because if he gives you a bad grade, you might not, go on to be a brain surgeon or a heart surgeon or something like that.
Yeah. It's tough.
And you got to give those kids a bit of credit for having, if you have the fortitude to broach it, you have to have the understanding that if this guy is a clown, you got to back off. Okay? Shut up. Take your comeuppance and know that guy, and understand the fact is that guy is totally out of bounds in the way you're thinking. Okay? But you're not going to change his mind. And there's no sense arguing with him. It's like a couple of guys I said, there's like one guy in my family, another. There's no sense me discussing this with him because he's a lunatic and he can't figure it out anyway. Even if I showed him the difference, he wouldn't be able to figure it out. So why do you even try? I mean, if you have to, basically you have to be a person of your own. You got to know what you know, and you have to believe in what you believe in. Now, if somebody can come up and tell me, I'm sorry, Ken, but you're way off base here, and here's the reason why. Okay? I have to listen to that. Okay?
Well, I mean, I do that all the time when I listen to podcasts.
Sure.
Because I'm wanting to understand health and fitness. I have a certain belief system.
Exactly.
But I'm willing to change that based on new data that it's received.
Right.
Like, I've altered the way I exercise. I've altered the way I do stuff because I've taken in new information and being able to adjust that. That's
the way it's, fortunately, you're teaching your kids to do the same thing. Okay. And that's the right way of going things. I mean, just because you have a belief system, your belief system is the basis of everything. Okay. You have to have a belief system that, there's right and wrong, and you got to know right and wrong. But, you have to be able to look at saying, well, if you go too far this way, it's just as bad as going too far that way. You have to be in this middle range here. And in that middle range, there might be sometimes that you need to go this way a little bit, and then sometimes you need to switch this way a little bit. You got to understand that kind of thinking, because it's like, you'll get stagnant if you're thinking my way is the highway and I ain't going to change it. Pretty soon somebody's going to change it and they're going to beat you if you're looking around. I mean, if it's a race or something like that, think about the kind of things you just said. Your son had a 5K. Think about what he had to do in that 5K, because there was kids that were more experienced than him running that, and he beat him. Okay. Now, those kids that he beat should be looking at him and saying, how did he do that? What did he do that I don't? Because if you're beating high school kids and you're 11 years old and you're beating 14, 15-year-olds, you did something right and they didn't. So, and if you're the 15-year-old that wants to know what's going on, you go and talk to that kid and you say, well, how do you train? What do you do? What do you do different than I do?
Yeah, well, part of it is just,
part of it is probably he's good at it.
Yeah, it's a God-given talent.
Yeah.
Where it's like, just like my 6-year-old son is faster than his 8-year-old sister.
Yeah.
Because it's just.
But that's going to happen, I think, with boys and girls.
But it was just fun that my 11-year-old beat a competitive high school girl.
Sure.
And they did well themselves. They ran 20 in the 20s, which is quite good for high school girls. But well, this was a fun conversation.
Yes, it was.
And maybe we'll have a part 3 about some other topic. But